Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, of course, Chat Show. Hey, how are you? Well, this is the first Sunday in March. How about that? The dreaded Snowmageddon is coming to a close across the nation. It was a balmy 75 degrees in Sandy Montega area yesterday. Today a little more chilly, but how is it where you are? Not buffering. Write us at contact@kevinpollakschatshow.com and let us know a little bit more about you. You know, we've asked for questions. We have an Ask Kevin area that we're going to cross soon. We have the Larry King game contest, but we want to hear more from you as to your goings-on, your lives, what you're doing between chat shows. I know every Sunday is such a big deal for you to join us here. Did you enjoy the Oscar telecast? Let's talk about that for a second, shall we? How much, let's start pitching in. Let's start putting together a pool of money to get those two hosts back one more year. Shall we? Everyone thought he was stoned because he would like do that glassy eye thing.
He always looks like that.
But Jamie, you have a good point. He always looks like that.
I don't ever see James Franco and he's not like...
Sammy on Freaks and Geeks,
Yeah.
did he always look like that?
He always looks
did.
like that.
He did.
But did he always blow a little weed in between
He
shots?
might have.
Might have?
He might have. If he did it discreetly. Because I didn't see it.
I always think of that Brad Pitt character in the beginning of True Romance.
Oh, Floyd.
Floyd.
Right.
Rappaport's roommate. Who's just ridiculously stoned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I think of every time I see James Franco. So then when they announced that those two talented young people were hosting the Oscars, I think everyone felt the same way initially. And then they proved everyone right, kind of. She can sing, wonderful little audition for
I think she needed more costume changes.
American Idol, and then changed costumes 37 times. It was like a Cher concert.
I was amazed that her hair was being changed all the time because it was like I was like, how are they doing that so quickly? Like her hair would drastically change.
7 people backstage. That's how.
It's like a pit. You said it was like a pit stop.
It was
and they
a
would
pit
just
crew.
sound on her hair.
I think James is wonderful on that soap opera.
James Franco is fantastic in General Hospital.
The one that he is on.
Sure.
Doesn't he play a character named Franco?
Let's hope.
I think he does.
Yeah. Anywho, I want to start a fund to bring these two people back because that's what it's going to take. Because everyone was writing, Billy Crystal, look, see, he's there. Why can't he just continue hosting and send those two home?
And here's, I'm sure you were aware of this. They ask Billy Crystal
Every year.
Every year. They have a list of like 13, 15 guys they ask every single year and they go, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like the people who host are never the first choices.
Yeah. I wish they'd bring back my favorite, which was, my favorite always was actually Bob Hope and then Carson. And then I actually loved when Letterman did it. Loved it.
He's another one that
Because he was the
every year.
closest to Carson, that sort of Peck's bad boy Midwest thing that I like.
My vote's for Ricky Gervais next year, quite frankly.
Yeah. Let's do what Ricky did at the Golden Globes, which is to rip everyone a new one. Take the piss out, as they say.
Bring the
They
snark
did
back.
EW did a Entertainment Weekly, did an online poll, and they said Joel McHale is the everyone wants to host the Oscars.
He'd be great. He'd be fantastic.
He was great at the Spirit Awards.
And I hear he was fantastic at the Spirit Awards.
And he's easy in the eyes.
Oh, God. At some point, it just boils down
But he's
to
no
that.
old man Bridges.
He's no old man Bridges
Who
or
I think
70s
is-
Ramis. We're going to talk a little
70s
bit about
Ramis.
70s Ramis with our
Because
guest.
he knew 70s
With our guest
Ramis.
today.
That's my dream man.
Yeah,
70s
but
Ramis.
70s.
Yes.
Yeah.
80s, I take 80s Ramis too.
Would you?
Oh yeah.
Eventually, 70s Ramis would turn into 80s Ramis.
I know. I should take that.
All right, you do. Don't make me get the hose. Jamie, last time on the show, we had a little issue about your keys went missing, and we had some people comment and write in, but we were going to offer up a little chyron, a little lower third, that would give away some
Yes.
information about said keys. and
Yes,
what
to
we
send
can
the
do.
keys here to this weekend.
Yeah. So let's throw that up now.
Yes, my
There it
keys are
is.
still
Look,
missing.
it's developing.
Oh, look, it's developing.
Oh, yeah,
Look
we
at
see
that.
a thing.
Write to Jamie Foxx, care of thisweekend.com, 902 Colorado
There you go.
Boulevard, Santa Monica, California,
Send me some keychains.
90401. I have to read
keys
the
are
lower
naked.
third because there's people who just listen.
Sure.
A lot of people who prefer to listen and refuse to look at my face on camera.
Well, we always said you had a face for radio.
No?
Who told you that? Wasn't that?
Wow.
Oh no, that was what my parents used to say to me. I'm sorry, I got confused.
So, please, if you find Jamie's keys, by all means,
Well, these are to send keychains.
yeah.
Or
Or
if
if you
your
find
key-
them.
Yeah. Send in your version of what Jamie should use for a keychain now. Jamie has family in town.
I do. My mom.
Last time they were here, which was a year ago this time, I dragged Jaden on camera for the close, and on the drive here I said, remember when I dragged you on, do you want me to? No. She did not enjoy that, so we won't be dragging Jaden on. But I'm going to have to put Julia
she's
Kay
here.
on camera this time. So they're in the studio, which we're very excited about. And Tuesday, we're off to, of course, the Disneyland, which makes everybody happy. Burt Lancaster, talk about segues. Stephen Weber sent us this ridiculous audio clip of Burt Lancaster. He sent me 5, and we had such great response from it that I thought we would have another one. Now, keep in mind, these are just audio clips, so it's great fun for the people who download the audio portion of this show. But for those of you that are watching right now, or at a time of your choosing, it'll just be cutaway shots to us listening. So that'll be fun. The clip I don't think is more than a couple of minutes. And now keep in mind, this is 1950s. This is, I guess, the very first podcast. It's the only way I can wrap my brain around it. That he sat in front of a microphone, and this one has something going on in the background again. Last time it was him scatting in the background while he's talking. This time he's almost whistling. It's a little more aggravating and annoying with what's going on in the background. But he's just talking into a microphone, telling stories. I remember a time, and it's just that straightforward. So here's, oh God, I think I was 6 years old the first time I did a Burt Lancaster impersonation. And it was so lame. But at 6, it's all charming. I'm the Birdman from Alcatraz. You want to see my bird? That was it. That was it. Ha ha ha. I think it was Frank Gorshin's Burt Lancaster. I think that's what I was doing. I was doing Frank Gorshin's Burt Lancaster. Because he was the first one to do Kirk and Burt. Please roll Mr. Lancaster from 1958.
When I was in the film Come Back, Little Sheba,
Come back, little sheep.
I starred opposite the formidable Shirley Booth, known primarily for playing a frowsy housekeeper named Hazel. I was at first skeptical when her name was brought up, despite the fact she had played the role in Sheba on Broadway to wide acclaim. I decided to interview her. She came into my trailer wearing a low-cut cocktail gown, even though it was only 11:30 a.m. Why are you dressed so provocatively? I inquired. She said, so she could make my little freckled sausage twitch in my
Hang on.
And boy, howdy did it. I fucked her 6 ways to Sunday.
Kevin, there are
Finally,
children present.
and I snaked it inside her tender.
I didn't listen to this before.
cried,
I should have
knock
listened.
the enamel off that pipe, Mr. B.
Jaden, cover your ears. This is horrible.
Years
There's a
later,
13-year-old in the
told
room.
that story
I really
at a
should have cleared
memorial.
this.
Oh, wow.
Julia Kay is aghast.
there wasn't a dry eye.
My
in the
apologies. Those of you at home listening, enjoy.
There's a nice photo. There's a man.
Oh, I really should have cleared
room?
that one. The other one
Wow.
wasn't like that at all.
Wow.
Ah, now it's turned into a horrible thing. We'll
Oh.
edit it out, and I'll somehow have it removed from Jaden's memory. Should we play the Paul Scheer and Salvia debate
I think we should.
as a chaser?
As a chaser. Absolutely.
Josh, see if you can dig that up. That'll be a nice palate cleanser. Wow, that really got out of hand fast. that came off the rails and then went from provocative to straight into porn. Just exacting. Oh gosh. Oh, golly gosh. Well, I've got, normally the show goes 90 minutes to 2 hours. Today's show is going to go 6 hours in an attempt to put off the inevitability of being reamed after the end of the show for allowing that last thing to play. I
found it all very amusing.
Yes, well, thank goodness. We have, as I mentioned...
Jayden watches Sex in the City.
Yeah, you have cable, right? Yeah, she's fine. She's fine.
She's fine.
She and I were watching Charlie Sheen's...
Sheen's Corner.
Yeah, Sheen's Corner last night until we both fell asleep about 40 minutes in.
Oh.
Yeah, hello. I was going to avoid talking about it.
Charlie's Comedy Corner?
Well, just
That's
the whole...
what I think they should have called it, KKK. Charlie's
Just the
Comedy
whole
Corner.
thing. Charlie's Comedy Corner, they gone 3 Ks?
Yeah, the 3 Ks.
Start there.
Oh, we're going to get letters.
Work your way back. My ride's here.
No, not the Flapping Dickie. That's a different one.
We're doing Simpsons.
They're doing Simpsons
I'm sorry.
quotes. These two will go off in a heartbeat. We ask you to write in your letters to contact KevinPollock'sChatShow.com. We have a couple of them we'd like to answer right now, if we might. Nope, there's nothing in there. And then we're going to do a little demo of the Larry King game because I think we have a finalist in that as well. Here's your first Ask Kevin.
Ask Kevin.
Look at that, a little animated graphic. See, your company should have done that as well. We'll talk. Aaron Eaton writes, several years ago, randomly, I was sitting behind you for a showing of the Simpsons movie. After the movie, I spent some time with you searching for your missing keys with the itchy and scratchy keychain. I wanted to know, did you ever find your keys? Do you remember this?
I remember the keychain. I don't remember you losing the keys.
I have a very faint memory of this.
Because my keys that I lost, I had Itchy and you had Scratchy. That's cute.
Yeah, that's so cute. I did find those keys, would be the quick answer. Tracy Austin writes, I know that Jamie keeps a tight rein on the money, but
I try.
What is one of your guilty pleasures that you like to spend your money on? A custom-built poker table recently.
A barbecue? You bought this giant
2 days
barbecue?
ago, I went to Barbecues Galore, and I got myself a Cadillac.
I like to buy bling.
Oh, buddy.
Like my Dago pinky ring. I can
Yeah.
say that because I'm Italian.
Yeah. So the barbecue, I bought a crazy full-on professional with an island.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a 7-footer.
What are we gonna
Cinco
grill
de
some
Mayo.
alligator? What's going on?
It will all be tested Cinco de Mayo. Because it takes 4 to 6 weeks to deliver.
If you like carne asada,
And we
getting
do.
drunk with
Now
the
we gotta
cat.
pay for that.
We don't have the rights. No, parody.
It's a
First
parody.
Amendment, we're fine.
All right, so there's your Ask Kevin. Now the Larry King winner this week is Chuck Brand from Pennsylvania, Tyrone, PA. Are we familiar? Where's Tyrone? Ever heard of it? Jamie?
No.
Nobody?
Sounds made up.
Jaden?
I was in Tyrone once, but that was at prison. It's a whole other story.
Well, this is now it's Burt Lancaster
What?
again. This is
That was
gotta
a real
stop.
anecdote.
I've invited a 13-year-old into the studio, and now it's John Holmes hour. Okay. This is the Larry King game winner. If you want to write in your sample and see if you can become a Larry King game winner and get yourself a fine Larry King game or Kevin Pollak's Chat Show t-shirt, that's what it is. Here's an example. Remember the things we want. A bad Larry King impression, Larry having a moment where he shares something that no one wants to know, now to be referred to as a Burt Lancaster moment. And then go to the phones. And if the name of the city is funny sounding, it's helpful. Here's this week's winner. 5 a.m., the Sinbad Lounge at the Aladdin in Vegas. I'm playing poker with Ryan O'Neal, Martin Sheen, and Robert Downey Sr. I'm hot that night. Eddie Large in the pot, and I'm holding aces. Hotel security calls down and said Ryan's kid Griffin, Bobby's son JR, and Marty's Charlie are ripping up the penthouse suite. I lay 5 G's on my personal assistant, tell him to go quiet them down. How? He asks. I don't know. Get him a case of Jack and a kilo of horse. Always works for me. Blue Knob, Pennsylvania, you're on the air. What's happening? Oh, my. Oh, my. Somebody went out beyond the call.
Now,
Never mind you.
All right.
Write to contact KevinPollockChatShow.com. Congratulations to this week's winner. We ask only one more thing of this week's winner. Write us back and tell us your shirt size so that we know exactly which one to send you. Those of you at home also, you've asked about these shirts and how you get yourself one. You just go to the site, KevinPollockChatShow.com, and in the main homepage, there's some doors there, and one of them leads you to the store. Also, last update, we're building the subscription page. It's going to take a couple more weeks, but it's coming, and we'll tell you more about it when it's ready. So God bless and Godspeed. I became a fan of my guest today at a ripe young age when I was beginning my professional pursuit, my serious and sincere pursuit of stand-up comedy. And then mid-'70s. So now I'm starting to collect stand-ups from Tonight Show, but also suddenly the birth of sketch comedy on television happens. In America, of course, Saturday Night Live. In Canada, shortly thereafter, Second City TV. And then we eventually got half-hour versions to start with. And I remember there wasn't a great deal of promotion. It suddenly just appeared. And I remember a couple of friends and I, who at that point were collecting comedy albums of Jonathan Winters and Bill Cosby and others. And we were, as if comedy aliens had landed and no one told us, and they were in the backyard. And just the whole memorizing of sketches as they happen so that you could share them the next day. Yes, I'm old enough to be pre-VHS recorder. What year did the VHS recorder make its debut? Anybody?
I'm going to guess sometime in the 70s.
Late.
82.
Late
70s. 82's been
Beta.
Beta.
Oh, no, it's got to be pre-82. Because I was born in
Go
the
to the
house of
phones.
the VHS.
Go to the phones. Let's go to the chat room.
Okay, 80.
Yeah.
All right, 80. There you
I'm
go.
going to say 79 to 80.
I think you're right.
76.
And believe it or not,
Says
shouldn't have
Wikipedia.
talked.
no, you're good. Because I've been reminded by my director, the one and only Mike Rahman, that I piss and moan forever doing this show. The original idea was 1950s TV, this hour brought to you by. Because the first thing you do when you get on the interwebs is people say, how are you going to monetize? How are you going to monetize? How are you going to make money in this damn thing? And I said, well, I'm going to get a sponsor. And it's going to be, this hour brought to you by, and I'm going to get one big sponsor, and they'll sponsor the show. How about, no, not so much. Because the big sponsors are, I'm sorry, what is this? How do people see it? Lo and behold, the fine folks at Boflex came along 3-4 weeks ago and said, we'll sponsor your stupid little show. And I said, where do you get off talking like that? That's a strange way to start talking.
Yeah.
We'll sponsor your stupid little show.
I have a Boflex.
Do you have a Boflex?
I have one.
Oh, maybe instead of showing the VHS introduced in 1977, they're putting up on the board.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
Sammy, now he's gloating.
No, I'm saying I was born in a house with a VHS machine that existed already, so it had to be around at least a year or two before I was born.
Okay.
So that's.
Do you have a Boflex?
What year were you born?
I was born in 1982.
Aha.
They just weren't. They were invented. They weren't commercially available.
Nobody had them. Yeah.
This is
You're
like
right
the
and
Post-it
wrong.
notes. This is all coming back to the Post-it notes.
So, our guest has a Boflex,
You wouldn't know it to look at me.
and we're going to talk about it. But before I introduce the man on camera, I owe a thanks to the Boflex peeps. And the only way to thank them for being a sponsor on this show is to tell you how to get yourself one. They brought in a machine, and they said, if you just get on the machine and tell folks about it, that'll be fine for us, and just show yourself on the machine. So I got on this thing, and this is what happened.
Hello, how are you? I'm here to tell you about Boflex Tread Climber. Oh, this is exciting stuff. The machine is called the Boflex Tread Climber. The Tread Climber combines the motions of a treadmill, a stepper, and an elliptical into one beautiful machine. It's 3 workouts in one fluid motion. You can't touch it, folks. All you have to do to lose weight is walk. That's it. Wow, walk. Boflex recommends just 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's it. Ooh, how great is this? Boflex did a study at Adelphi University that showed the TRC can burn up to 40% more calories than a stepper, can burn up to 2 times the calories of a treadmill. Wow! These are 2 ways to request the treadmill info kit. There are 2 different ways. What's in the info kit, you ask? I hear you. The full-color glossy brochure that describes the Tread Climber's unique motion 3-in-1 design, available models, financing offers, etc. Also, a free DVD so you can see it in motion and learn more about the machine. And finally, bonus. Ooh, bonus. We love bonuses. The Boflex Insider's Guide, which includes a free fitness assessment, 6 weight loss secrets anyone can use to start losing weight today. Forget yesterday. We're talking about today. Info on nutrition, superfoods, and more. Hey, did I mention it was free? Enjoy your Boflex Tread Climber today.
Thank you, Boflex, for your support of this show. We much appreciate it. My guest today has a Boflex. Not that one. That's a new one. And you saw in the lower third there how to order it. Somebody get me, put the 800 number on the screen there so I can read it. Because I'm not sure, for those of people who are listening to the show, I should probably tell them the 800 number. Kenny, do you know where you stashed that little pamphlet?
Looking for it.
They're looking for it? Okay. So, as I was saying, before I interrupted myself, remembering that we had to thank the fine folks at Boflex, and I do, my friends and I started collecting and sharing memorized sketches from this show called Second City TV. And it was the beginning of my introduction to the cast. You know, they were mostly Canadian, if not all. We'll find out for certain. But I hadn't heard of any of them. My friends hadn't heard of any of them, which made it all the better because we were getting to discover something that nobody else knew about. And we weren't looking to be hip with information. It was like a brand new ball player. It was like a rookie season. It was these phenoms, and they'd all seemed like they were as skilled as any sketch players we had ever seen in the States. I'm talking dating back to seeing stuff on Sid Caesar and Carol Burnett and the like. And found ultimately more and more about Second City, not only as a television show, but as a theater group. And one of the, I'd say, founders of the Second City TV, because he was one of the original cast members, has joined us today, and he's been an unknowing, I would say, mentor of mine, and I am so very pleased to welcome Dave Thomas to this table. Thank you, sir, for all your mentoring.
Thank you very much
Over the
for
years.
having volume. Let me bring it down a little. For having me on your show, Kevin.
Oh, please. The Boflex you have at home, you said, is the one, this one?
Yeah, I actually use it to hang wind chimes.
I understand.
Because at my age, I don't need. No, I do a little workout once in a while, and it's good. But I'm not. To me, exercise is a way to get my head from one place to another. You know, I'm not devoted to it.
Sure, it's one of those things that you do have to devote. In case you were wondering, though, Dave, that new machine you saw, the phone number is 1-800-613-7280. Let me say it again.
Where's a pen when I need one?
Let me say that again for you. 1-800, oh, there's another number on the screen now. 436-63, excuse me, 1-800-436-6063. 1-800-436-6063.
391-2101, 391-2101.
Thank you. Okay, so before I go off into the journey, I want to talk briefly about the journey that brought you here today, which is in a police interceptor.
That's right. That is the car that I drive.
What year?
2009.
It's a 2009 model.
Yep.
Holy cow. And it's fully rigged with a radio and everything? Are you like
It is.
deputized? What the hell?
No, it doesn't have any lights or anything that you can be arrested for under the charge of impersonating a police officer. But it looks like a cop car. People get out of the way. And cops with radar guns like this will see you, and wave to you and get the next guy.
And this is why you drive it?
That's why I drive. Because I can drive and park with impunity in this city of cars.
I'm going to need the name of your dealer when this is over.
He needs the name of your dealer, your car dealer. When did you decide this was the way to go? Start driving these. It's been years.
I drove another car which shall remain nameless for many years.
Okay.
And I just got sick of it.
Right.
The American cars started to get better, and this car wasn't keeping up, and the technology was stuck in a kind of a,
Right.
a Rhineland rut.
Uh-huh.
Are you getting the idea of the car?
I am.
So I started looking around at cars, and you can't buy them new because they're fleet sales only.
Right.
So then eBay comes along, and I look and I see this FBI car in North Carolina. That was the first one I got. It had 18,000 miles on it, $11,000.
What?
So I made the deal, bought the car, had it shipped on a truck to my house in
Sure.
Malibu, and drove that for, a couple of years. And then I bought one for my son, and I bought another one for my other son, with 3 police interceptors.
You're
in
close
our
to getting
family.
a fleet sale now.
Yeah, pretty close.
So now you love this car.
I love it. It's got great pep. It's like, it's got all the stuff that a Ford Crown Vic has, but then some. It's got reinforced suspension. It's got an oil cooler, so you can idle for hours in traffic and your car will never overheat. It's got a oversized radiator, oversized battery for all the police equipment and things like that. So you can plug computers and iPhones and everything else you want into it and it'll never drain your battery.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just got specially reinforced doors. And my son, my oldest son, John, got a car, and they said, yeah, we couldn't take the ballistic panels out, so you can have them. So his car has ballistic panels in the doors.
What does that mean exactly?
It means you can fire some 9mm rounds into it, and just as long as they're below the window, you're good.
Does he get a break on his insurance?
I don't
Since his
think
car
so.
is bulletproof?
No kid gets a break on insurance.
No, they sure don't.
No.
Have you been a car guy for a while? Because I know.
No, it was really strange. It just sort of, as I got older,
Sure.
this kind of thing happens.
But the 58 Caddy that you bring out on weekends, how long have you had the 58 Caddy?
That was about 5 years.
Yeah.
I saw it on eBay.
Again with the eBay.
I sold my Superman comic collection actually not on eBay, off eBay. I tried to sell it on eBay. I scanned some of the covers and put it up. I had saved it since I was a kid, and it was a pretty good collection of comics. And I put it on, and then the collectors are like, we need to see the side to see the staples. And you go, what the hell are you talking about? You can't scan the side of a comic.
Yeah.
So they were so picky, and so that I put in a little announcement up saying, the sale is off. I'm putting them all back in a box, and you can't have them. And then this guy phones me.
Wow.
Or he emails me first, and he says, do you have a list of all your comics? I saw your frustration. They can be picky. So I said, yeah, I do. And he says, all right, send me a list. And so I sent him a list, and he said, I'll give you $50,000 for your comics. I went, all right, send me the money. So I didn't think he was for real,
Sure.
I get a certified check for $50,000 for my comics.
And then you went and sold the collection to somebody else.
Yeah. He came, I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to ship? He said, no, I'll come down. He says, are they in the comic boxes? I said, yeah. He said, I'll come down. I'll have UPS pick them up while I'm there. And I said, well, come at lunch. I'll make you a sandwich. So I made the guy a sandwich. He zipped them up, put stickers on them, and UPS truck pulled up, took the comics away, and he took off. And then I went on eBay, and what can I buy? And I just saw these old Cadillacs, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I bought this 58 Cadillac, and it was in Canada. And I had to ship it over the border, which is a big deal. You can do transport anywhere in the States. But going over the border, there's nobody will do it. And I finally found a Canadian carrier who said, yeah, where's it? I said, it's in Victoria, British Columbia. There's no rust there. And I said, oh, okay, well, we have a load going out there. We'll pick it up, bring it back to Toronto, and then we'll send it down to you in L.A. And I'm like, oh, okay, if that's the way you got to do it.
Traversing,
so
yeah.
It arrives, and this truck calls our house. We were in Malibu at the time. And we had these overhanging trees, and the truck said, I can't get down your street, the driver. And so my son and I went down and picked it up. And this green Cadillac backs out, and it was just beautiful.
Pristine.
It was just beautiful. No, it wasn't. I redid it.
Oh, did you?
I spent a fool's amount of money redoing it, but it was in great shape when I got it, you know? And I just love it. I love driving it. I love fixing it up. I know everything about that car now, so, you know.
Yeah, someone in my family, might have been my grandfather had, but I think it was the one with the fin tails and the double lights. What year would that? 59?
59.
59.
With the Jetsons lights on the back, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, personally, I like the 58. It still got the big wings,
Right.
but it was a little more understated than
Yeah.
the 59.
Oh,
I
boy,
thought it
is
was
it.
classier, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And the 57 has single headlights, and the 58 had the quads, and I thought, I kind of like the 4 lights, you know? So that was the one I got.
Right. By the time you're 12, I understand from your dossier, you had lived in St. Catharines, where you were born, which is not too far from the Niagara Falls.
Right.
Toronto, North Carolina, Birmingham, England, and then back to Canada, all by the time you're 12.
And Edinburgh, Scotland.
And Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh, I spent a wee bit of time there, yeah.
Yeah, well, you have family from there, too.
My mum, she's a Scot.
Right.
Still got her Scottish accent. She's
Does
been
she?
in Canada for 60 years.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I don't think Scottish people ever lose their accents.
Yeah. And you and your brother picked up on their accents when you were...
We did that because we were there in the late 50s, early 60s, and they thought everybody from Canada or America was rich. So we did it as a protection so that people wouldn't be hitting us up for money.
Seriously?
Yeah, when we were playing with our relatives' kids and on the street and things like that. Oh, you're from America. You must be rich. Have you got money on you now, you know? So my brother and I learned, you know, the Welsh dialect, because we spent time in Merthyr Tydfil, too. My dad was from Wales.
Right.
Then his parents moved to Birmingham, so then we would spend time in Birmingham, and then we would go to Scotland, where my mom's parents were from.
I know when, what's his name won the Best Supporting from The Fighter?
Christian Bale.
Thank
Christian
you.
Bale.
Mr. Bale has the Welsh accent.
Oh, and I was not the only one that didn't realize that he was Welsh. Everyone thought I was like, wait, when did he get an accent? And I was not the only one.
No, you
I
weren't.
talked to other people.
Because
and
the
they were like,
rant
oh, I
did not
didn't know.
even sound British. The recorded rant.
They're soner speakers than the boys from Wales. They have a particular dialect that's slow and lilting, and they're very depressed and dark people too, you know.
The Welsh.
I think largely, like, they're kind of like the Scottish in the sort of division of the Celtic clans. The Scottish came up happy. To come out on a grizzly, gray, raining day. It's going to be another great day today. You know, they're just so happy. And the Welsh are just brooding and melancholic, and the Irish are pounding it back because they're brooding and melancholic too. And the English have no personality.
I see. All right. I was hoping you would break it down thusly. But also during this time, your father was quite a comedy fan, was turning you on to the Goons and
Jonathan Winters.
Jonathan Winters, but also Andy
Griffith.
Just from the radio show.
Yeah.
Prior
when
to.
he did his sort of stand-up monologues, like traveling down number 1 Street,
Yeah.
which is US 1 going all the way down to Florida.
Right.
And he had jokes like, we saw a sign that said free picnic tables 1 mile. And I said, well, let's stop and get us one. And then the kicker is, we kind of wish we had waited till we was on the way back, being as it was made of concrete and all. You know, and it was just,
Yeah.
it was like real 50s, 60s jokes.
Sure.
But, you know, it was an education. Jonathan Winters, completely different, you know, improvising,
yes.
crazy.
Right.
But he also liked Tom Lehrer, and he would play his crazy songs for us. And my dad, when he played them, he would be like playing them and like, huh? Huh?
Right.
And killing himself laughing. And, you know, every son kind of wants to bond with his dad, so
Sure.
you'd be laughing with him, and pretty soon you'd be into it, you know?
Right. And so what developed for
Sellers.
you? Sellers. Peter Sellers.
Yeah, he was like such an amazing vocal technician
Yeah.
that you had to be in awe of his ability to do all those different dialects.
He transformed, and there was nothing there of Peter Sellers.
No. I mean, Chauncey Gardner's like the best example of that. Of all of his characters, that was just like a tabula rasa, a complete blank. Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, the garden in spring is just like a meaningless maniac, you know?
Yeah. Now, your schooling,
Mm-hmm.
you were a pretty solid student. Went on to university and no?
No, I mean, I did it. I learned how to write exams.
I'm not suggesting you enjoyed it.
No. But I mean, I was a charlatan in school. And by the time I had kind of cruised into the master's in English Lit level, I was way out of my depth. And there was no more faking it. These were kids that were from all over the, like foreign and from all over the country who had read not just the text, but all the supporting stuff.
Right.
And I was just sitting in those classes like, oh, God, I got to get out of here. I am such a fraud. And I started writing comedy sketches for, well, I wrote 8 sketches. I drove in this little Volkswagen to Toronto and I knocked on every door. All the TV stuff, nobody in TV wanted me, get out. And then I got into radio, and then some guy in radio named Jack Humphreys read the sketches that I'd written, and he said, these are funny, I'll buy 5 of them, and I'll pay you $75 for each one. Well, I drove back thinking, I'm in showbiz, $75 a sketch, you know?
Wow.
So I started doing that while the other kids were studying Milton, Chaucer, and Shakespeare. And
what do you think informed your sketch writing? Because it wasn't something you had necessarily studied other than as a fan, I'm thinking.
But you know what? I did study it hard as
Right.
a fan.
Right.
You know, I knew all the monologists. It's very strange today. This is what makes you sound like an old guy. Because I do a lot of writing with young guys in their mid-20s, you know, and one of them in a writing room didn't know who John Cleese was. I was like, what the hell?
Get out.
Get out of this room. You can't be in comedy and not know who John Cleese is. Our job, like when I met Marty Short and Eugene Levy, who I went to college with, we knew all these guys that went before us.
Right.
And, you know, I wasn't a big fan of, like, Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd, but I knew what they did, you know?
Right.
Charlie Chaplin, you know, sure, I knew what he did. And I wasn't a huge fan, but Fat Jack Leonard and comedians like that from the Catskills, I loved those guys, you know? Jackie Mason, you know, people like that. So all the guys that went before me, I knew. I knew their monologues, I knew their routines. And at that particular time, Mad Magazine was written by Hollywood writers.
Yeah.
Jay Cogan's dad, Arnie Cogan, for one.
Right.
Dick DeBartolo, Larry Siegel. These are all guys that wrote for Laugh-In and shows like that, you know. And they're like writing for Mad Magazine. So Mad Magazine's comedy spoofs were a little primer in primer, whichever way you pronounce it, in sketch writing and comedy writing.
I love them to death.
Yeah.
Had a subscription, couldn't wait to get the new one.
So if you knew that, you had to start, you know. And so for me, writing sketches was, okay, now I want to write my own, you know.
Right.
I've read all this stuff. I've watched all those guys, you know. I've listened to the Bob Hope monologues and the Johnny Carson monologues, and I get the structure of the jokes. I know how they work. And now I want to write my own. So that's how I started writing, you know. And
no one told you you could do it. You took it upon yourself. I'm going to do this.
yeah, it's funny, you know.
Because where you get your support and where you get your encouragement from, I didn't really have any, you know. These thoughts of doing stand-up, these thoughts of doing what I pursued were not encouraged by anyone. They were sort of my version of playing, you know, as a kid.
If you've had people come to you and say, hey, like people who want to get in showbiz, how do you get into showbiz? You just go, excuse me, you're never going to get in showbiz. And the reason is, people who have to ask aren't going to do it. People like you, the question is not how did you get in, it's like what could have stopped you.
Right.
And it's just, it's what you wanted to do. And for me, being like we lived in Dundas when my dad was teaching in the philosophy department, and I was like in high school. And Hollywood might as well have been Mars.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It was so far away from where I was. Dreaming of that, people, you're going to go to Hollywood? What a clown. Get out of here. You're going to work in a factory like everybody else around here, you know? Or be a teacher maybe like your fancy pants dad. So, you know, I kept my dreams to myself. I didn't do any plays in high school, you know, because it was like, I didn't want to be in a high school play.
Right.
I wanted to be on TV, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So, I don't know.
And you actually, you mentioned that you met Eugene and Marty, and Ivan Reitman also was part of your class in school, right? In university.
Yeah, he wasn't in any of my classes, but I knew him because there was no drama department, no film department.
Yeah.
It was all extracurricular stuff, and it all happened at the student union, at the student center.
And the four of you kind of put it
So we met there and got together there, And I didn't really know Ivan that well. I knew Ivan through Eugene. Right. But, I knew him to talk to and everything, but I didn't actually work with him. Neither did Marty, actually. Eugene was the only one who worked with him when we were back in college. Ivan did a very bizarre movie called The Columbus of Sex, which the Mounties confiscated because it had some raunchy stuff, but definitely tame by today's standards. But it had raunchy stuff, and it was just like, whistles and cops all over the campus and confiscating the film.
Was it a comedy or?
No, it was kind of like a coming of age, sexual awakening thing, Columbus of Sex, as the title might. And then he did another thing called Orientation, which was more commercial, about a kid kind of going through first year college, and that ended up playing in a short film circuit, such as they were back then.
Right.
And then he did this thing called Cannibal Girls.
Sure.
That Eugene was in.
Of course.
It was really like the lowest of low rent horror movies.
Is there any way we can get our hands on it?
I don't know.
Because that sounds pretty great to me.
I bet Ivan has
Eugene
one.
Levy and Cannibal Girls.
But I think Andrea was in that
Someone
too. Make
a note, please, in the other room. When Eugene Levy is here April 17th, I need to discuss Cannibal Girls with him. Oh, my, that's great. And so Marty Short, I'm guessing, is also a ridiculous cut-up as we know him today.
Yeah, we all did plays, and we went
of
to
your own doing.
Yeah. We went to the student union to get funding because we couldn't do it any other way, And you kind of have to go cap in hand to your peers when you want funding, and then they suddenly become philosopher kings. Like, what kind of plays are you going to do? Like, you're 19. Shut up. We're going to do plays. And I found the way to fix that later. I started going out with the president of the Students' Council, but it was like in third year, and that way it made stuff easier. But it was like...
I'm sorry, did you sleep your way into the business?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And in college.
Yeah.
And, but they wouldn't let us start a theater group that we wanted to start. They made us start McMaster Shakespearean players.
Right, of course.
So we said, so is that all we can do is Shakespeare? No, you can do other things, but you must do some Shakespeare. So we went, yeah, sure, okay, give us some money. And then the first play we did was The Odd Couple.
Of course.
And then we did a couple of Shakespeare plays, but, it was...
Not because you wanted to.
No. But it was fun working with these guys,
sure.
And it was a good time.
Yeah. Now, out of university, you're off to become basically a copywriter for a pretty big ad agency, McCann Erickson.
Yeah.
They were huge, right?
They were. I had done 6 months in Godspell as part of a replacement cast.
That was the only play I did.
Right.
Godspell.
You did Godspell?
Yeah.
That's the only play I ever did, too.
I was also the only cast member who didn't have a solo.
Me, too. Herb.
Yeah.
You were Herb? Herb! All right.
I've never met another Herb.
I'm your Herb, baby.
The only one who didn't have a solo. You know what that means?
Yeah.
We can't sing.
Can't sing. No. So I did that.
Yeah.
And then after that, I couldn't get any work,
right.
As an actor.
Sure.
So I thought, well, screw this. I'm not going to be a waiter that says I'm an actor. So I'd been editor of the student paper, and I went back to the student paper, and I just wrote up a bunch of fake ads with pictures and printed them up, wrote some fake TV commercials. And then I started phoning ad agencies, and by the time I got, alphabetically, by the time I got to the M's at McCann Erickson, I got hired by this guy who was a very odd guy, Harry Yates, who had been at Doyle Dane Byrne back in New York, back in the sort of Volkswagen commercial heydays when they're really super creative.
The Mad Men, as we know them now.
And this is different than the Mad Men portrayed, you know, in the television series on AMC, because this would have been a decade later. And by this time, the 60s thing had happened. And so all the copywriters, none of them wore suits and ties. And we were all, you know, able to come in grunge and jeans and long hair and, you know.
The hippies.
Yeah,
The
and we
hippies
were
had taken
able to
over.
exercise our creativity that way.
Right.
But
That's how Mad Men will end. The hippies will take over.
yeah,
That's how the series will end.
Don
but
Draper
it all
gets
boiled down to one thing, and that was we were bullshit spinners. You know?
Yes.
And they would come in and say, "Okay, we got a thing here that we need to sell for this company, and how long is it going to take? A month." And the account executives were cool with that. We were like, "Good, a month off, you know," and you don't do it till the day before, you know, and then you're, "God damn it, I'm like, I'll never do this again," you know. And so I started out as a junior writer on Coca-Cola account, which is all the really bad stuff, the retail stuff, you know. And basically it's a war, at that time it was a war in the stores between who had the tallest bottle. And they kept doing remolds, like with thinner bottles, and getting to like really bizarre heights so that their bottle looked taller and people would take it.
I remember Pepsi was...
that was the main competitor.
Yeah, I mean, they always were the main competitor, but you mentioned the height of the bottle, and it never dawned on me until you said that. But one of the things that's striking to me about the Pepsi bottle was that it was so damn tall.
Yeah.
And the Coke bottles seem always smaller, and therefore, to me, there's a certain charm to them. I never thought about the height of them. But so you had to deal with this as a writer.
And then I got this assignment for a really ill-conceived commercial called Capital Caps, where underneath the cap there was, and people would get
prizes.
So
sweepstakes.
They said, well, I wrote this. They gave me like 28 and a half seconds, which back then with the film roll-in and everything, that was your whole time. I had 28 and a half seconds of legal copy. So there was nothing I could do creatively in there except for visuals. So I kind of borrowed that thing that Don Knotts used to do, the weatherman with the breakaway pointers and charts and things like that, and had made a bit out of how much legal information there was. And I went into Coca-Cola and I performed it for them, and they said, "Who do you want to do this?" And I said, "Tim Conway." And figuring, I'm in Canada and Toronto, they're never going to get Tim Conway. And sure enough, on a plane a week later, I'm working with Tim Conway on my Capital.
Well, they are
Cap spot.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. And then it becomes a big hit. And then the next thing I knew, they fired the girl who was their main writer on Coke Canada and made me the senior writer for Coke Canada based on one commercial.
Wow.
And then they sent me to New York to work with this guy named Bill Backer at McCann in New York. And Bill Backer was the creative director, and he had created Things Go Better with Coke.
Oh,
I'd
wow.
like to buy the world of Coke on the mountaintop.
Holy crap.
And It's the Real Thing Coke. Those are his campaigns. So he was like a monster hit in the ad agency business.
Move over Don Draper. This guy's amazing.
And I went to his office, and it was like he had a big grand piano in his office. It was a corner office on, I think it was Lexington. I don't think it was on Madison Avenue. And I walk in there, and there's this little guy in a gray suit with a black bow tie, and this is Bill Backer. And what the hell is this guy all about? So he starts quoting Shakespeare to me. And I'm like, 23 or something like that. I just come out of college, and I had to memorize some Shakespeare too. And I thought, oh, that's the game. All right, fine. So I started quoting it back. And that was my ticket. He loved me. And just
Because you were forced by the student union and university to do a couple of Shakespeare plays.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it. So then, luckiest guy in the world, right? So then he says, I want you to do a commercial in England. And just go get some good-looking kids and write. Do you know how to write a jingle? And I went, sure. I had no idea how to write a jingle. And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, all right, write a jingle, and then we'll get Billy Davis to do the music, and then we'll send you over to England and you do a spot. So I was doing stuff for McCann in New York, shuttling back and forth to Toronto, going over to England, and
You're 23, 24 years old.
yeah, and then Second City had opened a branch in Toronto, And I went and saw the show, and it was just like, oh my God.
Tell us the cast at that point. Who are you talking?
Dan Aykroyd, Valerie Bromfield, Gilda Radner, Jerry Salzberg, Joe Flaherty, Brian Doyle Murray, Bill's brother.
Brian Doyle Murray's our neighbor.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay. I ain't gonna shut down Brian talking like that.
You were doing that earlier.
was doing him earlier.
Were you?
I always scream outside his house, "Brian Doyle Murray." Then
We were walking up from the farmer's market, and she yelled his name as she always does, and I started doing that grumbly. Hey, kids, what do you yell my name for? So they're in the cast, and
It was an
you have an
amazing
epiphany,
show.
right?
And I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do more than anything in the world.
Right.
Then it closed because they couldn't get a liquor license. And it was like, oh no. And then, so I'm still writing ads and going back and forth. And then 3 months later, it opened on another corner and they got a liquor license. And this cast is slightly different. It's John Candy, Andrea Martin, Gilda Radner, Flaherty, Gene Levy. And I'm thinking, oh, they're not going to leave. So how am I going to get in this show? And then they did. 2 of them did leave. Oh, and Danny Aykroyd was in the show, too.
And then another Canadian, Lorne Michaels, was starting a show in New York.
Not just yet.
Uh-huh.
First of all, Bernie Solons, who was running Second City out of Chicago, said, I got a brilliant idea. We're going to open a show in Pasadena. It's like, okay. So he sent Candy and Flaherty, and then he got a couple of people from Chicago. Betty Thomas, I think, was one of them. And Dick Blasucci.
I know Dick Blasucci.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So Dick was in the cast, and they went down to Pasadena, and it closed in like 3 weeks or something like that. No business. And while they went down there, I got in. I auditioned and got in. So I was in with...
They were out of town for 3 weeks, and you showed up.
Well, they auditioned for replacements while they were away, you know, and they figured it'd be long term.
Now, did you tell your family, because you mentioned before that you weren't letting anyone know your ambitions. And so here you are with this amazingly successful career at age 23, 24, traveling the world, forgive me, in the commercial world and for the ad agency. So when you decide to audition, did you tell your family? Did you tell your friends? Did you let anyone know?
Yeah, I think I told them. I think, you know, I was really taking a big pay cut because my started in Second City at $145 a week. And I forget what I was making in
your
advertising.
dossier suggests you were making upwards of $50,000.
Yeah, I was making a lot of money in advertising.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
At 23 years old.
But I got a chance to work with Aykroyd, and the minute we connected, it was just like, well, what were you doing before this? Advertising, right? He said, let's do some ads. He said, because, you know, we're just sitting around all day waiting for the stupid show at night. So Danny's always been a multitasker and a real businessman. So he said, what do you get for a 30-second spot? And I said, well, there's a guy, Sid Kessler, going around selling stuff. He's getting $1,000 a spot. Oh, great. We'll do these. So we started writing a bunch of retail ads. So we're doing the show at night, spending the whole day writing retail ads. Then we got a job writing some kid shows for CBC. And we were writing shows about vegetables.
Sure.
People in big vegetable costumes, you know?
Right.
And just killing ourselves laughing about how stupid they were. And then Belushi's trying to get Dan to come down to New York. So Dan goes down to New York and auditions and gets the part. So then he's gone. And Candy, who had gone to Pasadena, comes back into the cast.
Right.
So now I'm working with John Candy, which is great too, you know? John was like a big kid.
Loved
he was
him.
like just all play.
Yeah.
And you'd walk into a scene with John that was pure improv. And John kept all his stuff in the same place. So his blowguns were up here, the file cabinet was over there, the library was over there, the books were, you know, everything was like, had its place, you know. And once you knew John's room, you could play in his room with him.
Right.
And it could get real fun and go real fast, you
Right.
know. And so that was like, while I was doing that, Bernie was really pissed from Second City in Chicago that Lorne was raiding his cast and starting this sketch show on TV. So Bernie says, we'll put our own show together. So we did this show that you were describing that kind of snuck on the air because it was in, I don't know, like 48 syndicated markets, the budget for the show was so low.
Yeah.
It was like $3,000 a show or something, you know.
my God.
And it was real public access TV.
Right.
And Harold Ramis came up as head writer. Joe, Catherine, Andrea, myself, and Eugene Levy sort of formed the core of that cast. And, you know, for a long time, we just didn't think anyone was watching. And I think that was largely true.
Well, it was on first in Canada.
Yep.
And
No, it was syndicated immediately. So it was on the only way they could even make the $3,000 a show work
was to sell to
was
some
to
O&Os
sell-
in America?
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't O&Os, they were private stations.
Oh,
They were
were
the
they?
ones like back then, like Channel 9 and 9 in New York, you know.
Right.
Wasn't any of the 2, 4, 7.
So you knew this was being sold in the States, and you knew that now you're on television in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you're shooting something that feels very low budgeted, you're on television
Oh, yeah.
in your home country, but also in the United States. Is there a sense among this otherwise young and enthusiastic group that, holy shit, we're actually doing this and this is going on TV?
There was, but
Because you're in a bit of a bubble while you're making the show.
absolutely. We had no live audience, and we just shot it single cam like film. But the bubble always got burst when we faced reality. They flew us down to New York for a press conference. And we were all excited about this. Press conference, New York City, here we come.
Like the Beatles.
And honestly, there were 2 reporters there. There was this guy named Marvin Kittman. You know who this guy is?
I don't know.
From Newsday magazine. He ended
Oh,
up
yeah.
becoming an early champion.
Sure.
And then some kid from a college paper, and that's it. And John Candy in particular was just like, oh, we're failures. We're miserable failures. Look at this.
Well, they set you up a little bit when they decided to fly you to New York for
Yeah.
a press conference.
I don't think they knew it was going to be that bad.
Right.
And so we always had these sort of like shots that reminded us that we're nothing, you know? And it wasn't until the show got picked up as a 90-minute show
Right.
by NBC that it actually started to get momentum. And that was Brandon Tartikoff, who was a real champion of the show.
Right.
And he just said, he first of all, he put the 3rd season of the half-hour show in all the O&Os.
And that's what it was.
And it was like on Friday night late. And then he gave us this really tough time slot after Carson Friday night, 12:30 to 2.
Right.
So we had a 90-minute show going from 12:30 to 2. But it got notice.
And back then, was Carson also 90 minutes still?
No, he was an hour.
It was back to an hour.
Yep. Yep.
And at that point, 3rd season, you said. Mm-hmm. That's because I know Rick,
That's when he joined.
right, he hadn't joined until then.
And the reason was that the show had become so kind of unsuccessful
Yeah,
that the cast they were like abandoning ship.
right. Eugene and Catherine, I think, left and then came back just for...
Eugene and Andrea went to LA to try and get in sitcoms.
Right.
And Catherine just took a year off because she was sick of it. And John took his own show for another Canadian network called Big City Comedy,
Right.
which ended up tanking and becoming a big disaster.
Sure.
And so during that year, we had Eugene and Andrea for like 2 weeks. They said they'll fly in
Right.
and do 2 weeks of shooting. So we had to do all of their stuff for the whole season in that 2 weeks. And then we needed replacements for the other cast. So Joe Flaherty brought in Robin Duke and Tony Rosado. And I'd met Rick at a party, and I brought Rick in.
And he was a stand-up
yeah,
at the time.
that's right.
Had you seen his act, or you just met him?
No, I didn't know anything about him until I met him at this party. And he was really fast. He could do impersonations. He was funny. He was really prolific. You could see it, you know?
Right.
And he really wanted it. And I just thought, well, this is exactly the kind of new blood we need, because the show is beat up.
Yeah.
And, you know, going into its 3rd season after being down a year and just, you know, not a success at all.
Right.
So he came in and he was just exactly that kind of energy that we needed, you know.
Wasn't there a Woody Allen and Bob Hope thing? Sketch?
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, that was fun.
And that was improvised. We had a little cassette recorder that we'd use in the writing office, and Rick and I improvised that. And basically just transcribed it, with some editing from the improv, because it was just, there was a connection going there, and Rick got in Woody's head and really understand Woody, and I got into Bob's head and understood Bob. But more than that, we understood each other. He understood me as Bob, and I understood him as Woody. Mm-hmm. So we got to kind of push each other and, have Bob make fun of him for doing that kind of, that neurosis stuff that you do. And
well,
then,
without sounding a bit didactic, I think it's extremely important, Bob, that, you remember where you came from, which is neither one of the coasts. Let's start there.
Yeah, well, I'm from Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly.
And the weather there is so bad. A headline out in the Cleveland Plain Dealer the other day was, the sun came out for the first time, the headline in the paper was, "Strange Ray Baffles City." But I want to tell you,
we had a great time doing that, and then that became, the Bob and Doug stuff was just filler. And all the rest of the cast would go home, and we only agreed to do it for the Canadian show because it was 2 minutes longer. They had less commercial content.
Yeah, there was a Canadian content law. I don't think a lot of people know this. I found through the research that blew my mind. The Bob and Doug became arguably two of the most popular characters that ever came from the series. And they were an add-on because of this Canadian content. You had to have an extra 2 minutes, and you guys were basically thumbing your nose, saying, well, we'll just do these two completely Canadian stereotypes, and we'll give them that for their extra 2 minutes.
We were mocking them.
Literally.
Yeah.
It was one of those necessity from that is born.
Sure, but, keep in mind, here's the sort of real feeling. None of us ever liked that entertainment should be an issue of nationalism. It was just like, oh, shut up. You have to compete in the real world of entertainment. It's like Belushi was trying to tell Danny to come to Saturday Night Live, and he was going, Danny, come to Rome.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, you want to be a gladiator, you don't do it in the provinces, you go to the big arena, you go to the Coliseum in Rome. And for somebody who wants to be in entertainment, that's what it is. It's New York or Hollywood. Yeah. Those are the Romes of the entertainment world. Right. And all the world knows that, and they all sit there and watch the Oscars because it's Rome. So to make shows that are flag-waving and nationalistic, and there's always been this thing in Canada about, trying to preserve their cultural identity, which is really stupid, I think, because 90% of all Canadians live within 100 miles of the American border. They all watch American TV. They're like literally sitting there on bleachers looking at the U.S. going, ha, that's great, give us some more. Nobody in Canada gives a shit about Canadian culture except a few people in Ottawa. So they're always mandating and legislating that. And the public is just like, sure. You can put all that stuff on, but we're going to watch all the American feeds that come in over the border. Right. And, that's what they do.
So you and Rick get into a room, and you're going to be these two toque-wearing Canucks. And at some point, you would send the rest of the cast home, most of the crew, the director had gone, and the two of you would just improvise, and they would cut up these 2-minute pieces.
We had a floor director that would count us in for each one, and we would improvise more than we need, because most of them were bad, because we were just making them up.
And you were drinking real beers and frying real bacon back?
It was a happy hour. It was the end of the day, and everyone was gone. So the floor director would count us in, there was a switcher up in the booth, and there was usually just one camera. And, excuse me.
Sure.
There was like one camera, and then they'd count us in, and then they'd give us a 10 to get out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, good day. And that was it. And we were out, because they had to be exactly 2 minutes to fill that Canadian content slot. And we didn't think anyone was watching the show. We didn't think anyone cared about those characters. And then the first indication was we got a phone call from somebody that says, hey, would you two guys like to fly to Winnipeg to have drinks with the cheerleaders for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which is a Canadian football team? And Rick and I are both single guys, and we thought, oh, how bad could that be? All right, let's go.
Sounds horrible.
So turns out they were fans of
Bob and Doug.
McKenzie brothers. We get off the plane. There's like 1,000 people cheering for us. And we drive into the hotel, and there's a freeway overpass, and there's no graffiti in Canada, okay?
No.
You know that.
To this
and
day.
Sprayed onto the overpass is "Take off, eh?" And we looked at that and thought, oh, wow. This is really weird. So we kind of got an inkling that it was catching on.
Right.
And then we decided to do I had been bugging everybody in the cast to do a comedy album. Nobody really wanted to do it. And it was just not enough time, and the show was taking up a lot of time. So I said to Rick, I said, why don't we do a comedy album with the McKenzie brothers? And he said, well, then we got to get a record deal. I said, my brother is a Canadian musician. We'll get his record company to do it. I said, they don't even have to put up any money. You know, it's like we'll improvise it and get somebody to cut it. So we asked this guy, Mark Giacomelli, who did the editing for SCTV. We said, will you edit this album for us? So we went into the studio and improvised it. And then he said, what do you want me to do with it? I don't know. You cut it up. Make it better. Take the funny stuff and throw away the bad stuff, you know? So that's what he did.
You literally trusted his comedy ear, not your own at that point.
Well, we didn't have time either, you know,
you
because
didn't
we were
have
shooting
time.
the show.
Again, necessity.
Yep. So
This album ends up getting a Grammy nomination.
yeah, I mean, but you know, you really learn about the business when you've been doing it a while. It's like all these things, like, they have a momentum, and it's not about content. It's more about momentum.
About moving forward. Absolutely.
And we got a film offer. Well, first we said, we're going to write a movie script. And the producers of Second City said, if you do that, we'll sue you because we have exclusive contracts.
They own the McKenzie brothers, is what they were saying.
No, they didn't. We owned the characters. But they owned our time because they had first position exclusivity with us. So we went, all right. So we hired a writer to write it with some of our record royalties. And he came back. He was a good writer, but nobody knew how to write for the McKenzies except us.
You weren't allowed to write your own McKenzie brothers movie.
So he comes back with the script, and it's just bad.
And you sent him off with a notion of a version of Macbeth. Hamlet.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
He just said, what should the story structure be? And I said, I don't know. This girl comes back from school, and her dad's dead, and her uncle married her mom, and Hamlet, get it? And we're Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, okay? That's it. Write that. So he sort of wrote that, but it wasn't the McKenzies at all, you know? And then...
All right, hold that thought. Let's let the audience jump in.
Sure.
I just realized that I'd forgotten about them because I was enjoying the hell out of everything you were saying, and I thought, oh, right, we offered them a chance each week to ask some questions. This one comes from the Facebook areas. The Dan O'Connor asked, was it always your intention to base Strange Brew on Hamlet, and how the hell did you get Max von Sydow involved? I actually have in my notes, you had to pitch, J-Mac, one of our producers, does research, and I couldn't believe when I read this, you had to pitch on the phone. You're in Freddie Field's office, and he says, he could get Max von Sydow on the phone. Could you tell him you always wanted him to be in the movie? And he says, hold on a second, Max, and he hands you the phone, and you have to pitch Max von Sydow on the phone the story of the movie.
Exactly right.
Oh, my God.
And I went into, like, the whole story, and it took me about 10 minutes or something. It's a long time
just
on the
you
phone
talking
with a guy in Sweden. And at the end of it, there's a pause, and Max goes, so, it's a comedy then. And just completely sucker punching us. And everyone in the room laughs. Ah, Max, that's hysterical. You're perfect for the part. So, but I actually really did want him. And so he said...
Did you have your Max von Sydow impersonation at that point?
No, I got it
You learned
from the
it
set.
from working with him.
From working with him, and I started doing it. And it's like, whenever I've done this in my life, like I'll make fun of somebody or impersonate somebody, the people I'm doing it for, all of a sudden they'll start to look scared, and I realize...
He's standing behind you?
Yeah, right behind me. So I'm doing Max, we're going to go to the loading dock, and then I want you to break that neck. And I'm doing his voice, and he's behind me, and then Max looks at me. I look at Max, and I go, hey, it's comedy, it's what I do.
That happened to me with Wally Shawn.
Really?
Yeah. I was doing...
House arrest.
House arrest.
I'll be
Thank you,
early.
Sammy.
No problem.
And, you know, he was in there with that ridiculous voice, and then he would leave the set, and I would say, is it a Daffy Duck? Is it a version? What is he saying? It's inconceivable. And the crew I was entertaining the troops, you know, and then they get the strange looks on all their faces, and I go, he's right behind me, isn't he? And sure enough, there he was.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
so Max agreed to do the movie because his son told him to. His son was living in America.
He called his son and said, what do you know about the McKenzie brothers?
He said, oh, they're great. You should do it.
And that was it.
So I'll get on a plane then. So we had Max. He's a very, very sweet guy, real professional, you know.
So he asked, it was always your intention to base it on Strange Brew, and as you just mentioned...
On Hamlet.
On Hamlet, sorry. You just mentioned that it was really sort of an afterthought because the writer was sort of lost.
Yeah.
Was that the idea, that he was kind of lost?
Like, we were trying to pitch this fast in a hotel room, and I'd never written a movie script, so I was like, I don't know, you know, Hamlet.
Yeah.
Do that.
That worked.
Yeah. There's a story right there. You just plug into it. Nobody's going to sue you because the guy's dead.
And the great irony of all of this is that here you guys had created the McKenzie brothers as a way to thumb your nose at the rules of Canadian content. It blows up. It becomes a comedy album. That blows up. It gets a Grammy nomination. It's bringing in money. You get the idea to write the movie for the thing, but you're not allowed to write the movie. That, to me, seemed torturous. So you had the wherewithal to bring this guy in, but at the same token, was there a part of you that was thinking, we'll just secretly rewrite the hell out of this?
Well, we did.
Yeah.
Because after we had finished the shooting for the season, because what happened was, and this is the discussion about momentum.
Right.
It's like when things are hot, it's not about content or quality. And I remember our agents at CAA sent the script out on Friday, and by Wednesday we had a deal. And this was the script we didn't like, written by the other writer. And so Rick said, I don't want to do this film. We're screwed. And I said, I'll bet you they didn't even read it. We could probably rewrite it and they wouldn't even know. And so...
So you think they greenlit it based on the album sales and the TV exposure?
Absolutely.
Right.
They didn't give a shit about the script, you know? It was just like, well, weigh it, fine, good, make the deal.
It's 108 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were with the worst distributor of all, MGM, who were just like...
Other than Bond films,
yeah,
they do have a tough
They're
go.
historically famous for being able to botch all comedies and anything other than Bond films, you know?
Right.
And then they've also they were selling off the lot, selling off their library, and we had a regime change right in the middle of post, so...
They just reminded or offered me up an opportunity for a realization. You know how you pass these stores year after year in Los Angeles or any town USA, and it's always 30 to 70% off. Right? Mm-hmm. The store's always 30 to 70%. They're always on sale. Year in, year out. This is what MGM has been. Everything must go.
Yeah.
Selling off pieces of the company forever.
Yeah. And there must have been so much there for them to have so many sales. I mean, selling the lot, I think, was it to Lorimar first?
Yeah.
That's who got it first.
That's right.
And I was there on the lot when they took the MGM sign down. That's kind of sad, you know? And then...
all the great musicals
And then they sold the library and Strange Brew to Turner.
Wow.
And then Turner got acquired by Warner Brothers, making any path to profit participation impenetrable. You know,
yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah.
You got 3 studios between you and any money. Forget it.
Wow. Even though you owned it.
No, we didn't own it.
Right.
No.
You own the McKenzie brothers, but once you make the
characters.
film, then you have to give up the rights.
Yeah.
For the film version.
We licensed the rights to those characters to MGM. We didn't actually even give them the rights.
Right.
Because we had a lawyer actually at the time who was smart enough to tell us to do that.
Yeah. So you were able to, well, that's great. That's actually pretty wonderful. So this guy writes a thing, you decide you're going to rewrite it. Rick says we're screwed, come on, and you're saying...
I started rewriting it, and Rick came over, it was about page 40 or something. Let me see what you got. And he read it, and he goes, okay, let's do this. So he started rewriting with me, and we ended up with a hybrid. We ended up some of the Hamlet stuff was still there.
Right.
But we had this sort of fake opening with us in our theater screening our own movie, releasing, originally it was Bees, but we couldn't release Bees in a theater because of the hazards, and it had to be Moths. You know, it's like Canadian productions, you know, it's on Hollywood, it could be Bees, but in Canada it has to be Moths. But we put that kind of stuff in it, you know, in the making, the sort of futuristic McKenzie's movie, and but it still had trappings of the other thing because we couldn't write it all because we were in pre-production already.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's just it. You ran out of time, basically.
Yeah.
So, like the first 70 pages, you guys
Pretty
had
much
rewritten, and then suddenly there was an ending that was from the original, in a sense.
I think so. I think,
Or it might have been the second act. Then.
dialogue was changed though. We
Yeah.
managed to change most of that.
Okay, there's another thing on the show that I mentioned to you is a rapid fire 5 questions. It's a this or that, Coke or Pepsi kind of thing, no incorrect answer, that they dial up, and they're all specific to the guest. These are from the audience. This one comes from the Twitterverse universe, called a Tweet 5. Cue Dave Keckner.
T5 forever now.
I don't know if you've worked with this maniac, but he is crazy funny. So, any idea how to pronounce that name? At Byulin? Byulin?
Why is this my job?
Sammy, you want to
I
offer
can't
up a
see it.
guess? Byoolin.
Buellin.
Byulin.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
Uncle
I can't
Trevor
read for
or
you.
Bill Needle?
Bill Needle.
Painted Ladies or Takeoff?
Painted Ladies.
Coke or Pepsi? It's actually in there. Hilarious.
Pepsi.
Wow! Even though Coca-Cola sent you on your way.
He's correct.
Dave Thomas Wendy's guy, Dave Thomas physicist.
Dave Thomas, physicist.
You think? Tex and Edna Boyle's Prairie Warehouse or Curio Emporium or Tex and Edna's Boyle's Organ Emporium?
Tex and Boyle's Organ Emporium.
Yeah. Those are all correct answers, sir.
That was based on a cross-country drive that I had, and I ended up in, I don't know, Kansas or something like that, someplace really late at night, a lot of mud, and there was this giant warehouse open at night, and in it were all these, it was a mail order kind of a place, right? In it were all these bins of everything, from like practical jokes like plastic vomits to like gardening stuff and tools and utensils, and it was just a giant warehouse, and there was like a sign up that said free budgie with every purchase over $100.
Oh my God.
So that was where the Tex and Edna Boyle free budgie and the Organ Emporium came from, because these guys also sold organs. It was like, I'd never seen a place like this.
Human organs?
No.
Because there's your story.
That's the story.
They had all these bins. Oh, look, it's a liver. Who needs a spleen? All right.
Thank you, Jerry.
We got to. Did you like the Jerry? Did you ever meet or work with the Jerry Lewis?
No, Marty did.
Yeah, of course.
I have a pretty amazing tape that Marty loaned me that I never gave back to him, of him and Jerry for some Disney thing, and it's the two of them sitting together talking for about an hour.
Oh my goodness.
It's an amazing piece of tape.
About anything and everything?
Yeah.
Holy-
But Jerry pretending to be flattered by Marty's impersonation of him, but not really.
You could tell?
Yeah. Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Well, speaking of that, we briefly mentioned the Bob Hope. You, for those of you who watched the Oscar telecast last Sunday, you saw a hologram of Bob Hope. A few of the lines of which were taken from historical moments that were matching the visual. Some of the lines, however, they needed to update, and they brought you in for this. So, what is that phone call like? I mean, basically, at some point, you're a go-to when it comes to Bob Hope, and have been for, my goodness, 25 years.
I did him on The Simpsons. He did himself on The Simpsons, and then after he died, I did him on The Simpsons.
Right.
And then I did this, and Don Misher was the producer, and I had done Bob's 90th birthday with him, and Misher was the producer of that. It was like the first 90 years or something like that.
Was that the first time you were in the same room with Bob
No.
Hope? No, that's what I thought. You guys had became somewhat friendly and played golf together, and
Well, not really golf, but he had a pitching wedge out in his backyard, and
He had one hole. He had like a 1-3 par
That's right.
hole in his backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he couldn't see that well, but he was still able to get it on the green, you know.
Holy
and that was an interesting day because I got a call from Ward Grant, his publicist. I was on Grace Under Fire, and I'd met him, and I'd done a show with him. I'd opened for him at the Playboy Club in New Jersey with Marty Short, Catherine O'Hara, and Andrea Martin.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird show.
You guys just went there to do sketches together?
We went there, paid a lot of money at that time.
Sure.
Not by today's standards, and to open for Bob Hope at the Playboy Gorge Club in New Jersey. And what we didn't know was they were closing the club, and just prior to the show, they told all the staff that they were fired and said, "And now a show." and we had to come out. And it was just like, honestly, if you've ever like walked into a sort of a wall of barbed wire energy, that's what we walked into. It was just awful.
Oh my goodness.
And we did some sketches, and a lot of stuff tanked. And I remember Marty and I still have this joke because I just said, let's just do Clue. Let's do an improv thing with Clue, and I'll be Professor Plum, you know. And Marty said, what have you got here? Is this a bit? What am I doing, you know? And Marty's got such amazing energy. In this sketch, we were tanking so bad because the audience hated us to start with. Marty fell down on the floor and started flipping like a fish and got the audience to just laugh at the physicality of that.
Sure.
I was killing myself laughing. I had never seen anything so bizarre and crazy in my life, you know?
Right. And then, of course, you meet Bob Hope backstage.
I met him because I had met him when I was 16 at the Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto. And I'd run backstage after his show and got him just as he was getting into his car, trying to shake hands with him. And he closed his power window and almost caught my hand in his power window.
Yeah, what do you need, kid? He's hitting the button.
So when I met him at the Playboy Gorge Club, I said to him, hey, Bob, I met you in Toronto at the CNE, Canadian National Exhibition. You tried to close my hand in your power window. And he's walking with some of his staff, you know. And he said, well, I must have been in a big hurry. And I said, like you are now, Bob? You know, because he wasn't even stopping to talk to me. And he stops and he goes, no, I'm not in that big a hurry. Who are you? What's your name? And I said, you know, nice to meet you, Dave. And then he took off. So there was that. And then I'd done a couple of shows with him. So this 90th birthday that Don Mischer was producing was something where I came out as Chester Hope, his nephew. This is stupid. That's like one of the names he used in the Road movies, and did this monologue. And most of the people at the show were like Walter Cronkite's age. And you could hear the loud noise of them scratching their head, you know, hundreds of people scratching their head all at once, looking at me doing Chester Hope, going, what the hell is this? And I remember Bob was getting on now in age. And
well, this is his 90th birthday.
And he was at that point in his career, which he did later, where he saw some of these shows special shows in Washington for the president. Mm-hmm. And the president sitting there, not on stage, but kind of watching his own show. Hope got into that at the end, where he would watch his own shows in kind of a regal manner from the sidelines.
Right.
And Mischer says to me, so you do your bit, and then you'll come down this ramp, and you'll say hi to Bob and Dolores, and Bob won't know you. He won't remember you. He won't talk to you. And I said, well, what the hell am I walking down the ramp to say hi to him for? He said, because everybody's doing it, just do it.
Oh, my.
So I walked down the ramp.
Torturous.
After doing my bit. And I just go, hi, Bob, hi, Dolores. And he gets up. And he comes over to me. And he says, hey, Dave, it's been some time since I met you up there in Toronto.
Oh, my.
And one of his writers had actually got me backstage. And, excuse me.
Sure.
Got congestion.
Hydrate.
One of his writers Jeffrey Barron, had got me backstage in Toronto, and I got to meet him there for the first time.
And here he is, 90, he remembers this.
Yeah. And so I'm talking to him, and you're him, and my camera's there, and he kind of cheats into my camera. And so I kind of like counter, and he does it again. And I go, oh, God, the old prick is blocking me from my camera on purpose. So,
What's the matter, Dave?
I said to him, hey, Bobby, I can do something with my ski jump that you can't do. And he said, oh, yeah, what's that?
like real competitive, you know. I said, I could take it off because I had a little prosthetic bulb on my nose, and I just ripped it off and handed it to him. And that made him laugh.
Oh,
and it
good.
was just like, okay.
Nice.
Okay. And then later on that evening, they had a big dinner, as they always do for these events. And Hope's 90 now, and it's really important for old people to get to their food. Did you notice this? That you go to any of these award shows, and all the old people will be right there eating their food right away.
Well, because they know the award show is going to be shit.
Yeah.
It's going to be a complete waste of time and boring. Let's at least have a nice meal.
So Bob's sitting there eating his steak, and Linda, his daughter, brings me up, and she said, you know, Dad, Dave called me on the phone the other day and did his impersonation of you, and it scared the hell out of me. And Bob's eating, he goes, yeah, he scares the hell out of me, too. So, anyway, we couldn't get him to look up from his steak. Linda's like talking to him, and I'm standing there, and finally I just let the guy eat, you know, and I walked away.
Sure.
So, cut to later, I'm doing Grace Under Fire. I get a call from Ward Grant. He says, Bob wants you to come over to the house. It's like, okay, he's in Toluca Lake. That's right near Radford, where we were shooting Grace Under Fire. So I'm like, all right. So I get my car and go over there. And
Just stone's throw. It's nothing.
yeah, and Ward comes down and he says, he's upstairs. You know, I'll take you up there. You know, I said, where? And he said he's sitting outside the bedroom. He's going to make up area outside the bedroom. All right. So I went up the stairs, and Bob turns and looks at me. He goes, oh, hi, Dave. What are you doing here? And I said, well, Ward said you wanted me to come over. And he looks at me. He goes, yeah, well, what do you want? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get into it. He's 92 now or something. I'm not going to get into it with a 92-year-old guy going, no, your publicist said you wanted me to come. So
Right.
I'd heard about this picture he has. And so I said, I want to see that picture you got of General Patton pissing in the Rhine. And Hope goes, you heard about that? Come here, I'll show it to you. And he gets up real animated and walks me to this wall of photos outside his bedroom. And while we're walking there, he says, you know, there were 3 of them. He said that, and then the Patton family wanted them back because Patton had said he'd cut a swath through Hitler's Europe and he'd piss in his Rhine. And he said, I got a picture of him doing it. So sure enough, he takes me, and there's General George Armstrong Patton, twin Colts, taking a piss in the Rhine. Oh, and Bob's got this picture. And there's like every president, and Bob with everybody, you know. And,
Right.
And there's a picture of Neil Armstrong, and Hope says, this is Neil Armstrong. He did my special right after he got back from the moon. That made me laugh. It's just like such
Here I am with the autopsy alien from
yeah.
Area 54.
So he just was like...
Club 50. No, Area 51.
51, yeah.
Got it.
He would still be doing his stuff
Oh, God,
today
yes.
in Afghanistan, you know?
No, of course.
If he was, you know...
Yeah.
Say, hey, this is Bob Hope coming to you from Tora Bora. You know, Afghanistan's holiday hideaway where a Mujahideen family can have a luxury cave for $5 a day.
You know? I watched his shows when I was a kid, and I
God,
knew
yes.
the rhythm of his jokes, and, you know...
Hey, how about that Taliban? Aren't they something? You know, it's like fighting the jihad to the last man. Jihad, that's Arabic for I'll believe anything that some crackpot with a beard tells me.
You know, it's just like
Yeah.
those structures where he asks himself a question in
Yeah.
it.
Hey,
and things
how
like
about that? Fill
Yeah.
in the blank.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, he would do jokes like, you know,
Back home, you know, we've had such a bad winter, there's so much snow on the ground, it looks like we're filming the Charlie Sheen story.
you know, he'd be like, he'd be doing his topical stuff on Charlie Sheen. And
Absolutely.
that was the style and structure of what he did.
Well,
And-
I mentioned the Woody Allen Bob Hope thing because I remember Woody Allen saying that he had lifted what became one of his famous asides. What I loved about Bob Hope in the movies were these great little asides, like in the middle of a scene with the pretty girl and Bing, and they'd have a thing, and he'd say, "Oh boy, look," and he'd do some little aside to, well, you watching, paying attention to the whole thing. And Woody Allen said that he basically lifted this from Bob Hope. Well, You know, that little
question.
Yeah, that little nervous tick.
And I believe more than that, his whole coward character
Yes.
was Bob Hope. Bob was the coward in the
Fantastic coward.
in the 40s movies, you know?
Yeah.
He's like, you know, he's surrounded by cannibals. He said, yeah, you wouldn't like me. I'm all muscle. You know, it's just like, I remember a shot of him and Bing, like, riding camels, and there's, like, across the desert, and there's a mountain in the background, and then it becomes the Paramount Mountain.
Right.
And Hope looks at it, he goes, there's our bread and butter. You know, it's just, so there were those reality breaks in the comedies, and that was, like,
Pioneer stuff back then.
Oh, God, yes.
People loved it.
Well, thank you for sharing, because I've always been, you know, for a guy who does voices, when you see someone zero in on one particular one.
Here's one I want to ask you about then.
All right.
Christopher Walken.
Yes, sir.
How did that come about? Because that's one that every impressionist would say, you cracked that.
Well, that's very kind. The very first guy that did it on television was Jay Moore. And he was on Saturday Night Live at the time, and they wrote a sketch for him, which was Christopher Walken's Psychic Friends Network.
Yeah.
And it would start with, you know, sitting on a couch and a little coffee table and a phone, and it would just be in one, as they say, and the camera would turn on, and he would be sitting there, hello, welcome, Christopher Walken's Psychic Friends Network. I know you're out there. Here's the phone. Call me. I know you're going to call. And then he sat there and nobody ever called. And he just kept saying, I know you're out there. And it was just on and on. And I watched this, and it was the first time, you know how, like Dana Carvey and I started out together at the same time in San Francisco, and we saw Rich Little do Johnny Carson. And we both sort of learned our Johnny Carson from that, you know? So there's always some inspiration. Mm-hmm. So I always give it up to Jay Moore. And then I was in a casting session with the Academy Award-winning writer, The Usual Suspects. And you know how it is. You've been a producer for many years. Someone comes in, they audition for you, and then they leave, and the casting director gets the next person. And after 3 or 4 days of seeing a dozen to 2 dozen to 3 dozen to 4 dozen of these kids coming in, you can't help but get a little giddy between you, anything to make each other laugh.
Right.
So Christopher McQuarrie and I start doing Bob Hope and Christopher Walken, I kid you not, as a Regis and Kathy Lee morning show. And I am doing a horrible Dave Thomas Bob Hope, and he's doing Christopher Walken, because I hadn't figured out how to do it yet. So I'm watching him doing Christopher Walken, and it was something. Hey, Chris, tell us who's on the show tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow, a fantastic show. We have a guy. He's got a peacock. The bird comes out, does impressions. It's fantastic. And so we were making each other laugh like 9-year-olds. We run into Jay Moore on the lot at Warner Brothers while we're in this session. We went to lunch. We run into him, and we tell him that we've been doing this thing. And I say, all right, Jay, you're the first one. What's the key to doing Christopher Walken?
Yeah.
And he says, every single syllable word when doing Walken becomes a 2-syllable word. So the word no becomes no. You know what I mean? There's always one little key, and then that was it. And then, as you said, you start to hear the rhythm. You heard the rhythm of Bob Hope. And at some point, it literally becomes a musical cadence, you know? As you said, the way he asked himself a question. So there were certain things for me for Walken, and I had done it early with William Shatner or Peter Falk. And I wanted to ask you, because when you do start to zero in on it, and you realize for yourself, oh, I guess that is good, you know? There's that click, you hear the voice in your head first before it comes out. I find when I do the people, it's almost like a possession. Like when I do Albert Brooks, because he's so fast and funny when he improvises, I'm actually faster and funnier when I'm doing Albert Brooks than I am as myself.
Because you're kind of channeling him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you got into the rhythm of, say, a Bob Hope or someone like that, where you start to think like that you know they think in those patterns, in those rhythms?
I did a thing for the Dave Thomas comedy show, the short-lived summer thing on CBS.
CBS, right.
With John Rourke, who did Reagan.
Sure, yeah.
And we just did the two of us sitting around talking about the conspiracies, like who shot Kennedy and who shot Marilyn, and stuff that we'd heard over the years, you know, and people that we hated. And it was very, very dark and bizarre. But he could channel, he could channel Reagan like a real, like Reagan, you know, and I got into a rhythm with Hope. And
when you can improvise as them.
Yeah.
That, I think, is when, what I was saying, this possession weird thing sort of happens.
Yeah.
You literally let go of your own...
There's obviously a limit to being able to improvise jokes, because Hope's joke structure is just bada-boom, bada-boom, bada-boom. You're going to run out of ammo improvising. You can't just do
And
that.
he had very specific written, he had files and files and files, which you obviously know of jokes from decades.
Yeah.
There's no keeping up with that, because it was, at some point, a joke machine. But his musical rhythm, hey, how about that? You know, that was the beauty of...
And one of his writers, Jeff Barron, wrote on SCTV. So I had one of his joke writers working with me. So that was really valuable, you know? And, but I did a show with him where his daughter told me this. There was a monologue in it, and Hope was reading the script, and he said, hey, put a joke in here that on the earthquake bit. He said, I danced around the house and the house danced around me. And she said, Dad, that's not your monologue, that's Dave Thomas's monologue doing you. And Hope said, oh yeah? He said, well, put it in anyway. If he's going to do me, he should do me the way I do me. So I got Hope actually punching up my monologue in his show.
That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. The Christopher Walken thing for me, that moment came when he got his hands and feet in front of the Grauman's Chinese Theater in the cement.
Yeah.
And they asked me to be one of the two speakers, just because someone on his staff probably had seen me do him on Conan O'Brien or something.
Yeah.
Because Quentin Tarantino was the other speaker at this moment, and they know each other, and there's a reason for Quentin to be there, but I did the impersonation in front of him, and it was the first time we had sort of met in front of the press. And I could just see out of my peripheral, well, I thought he might kill me, so that was on my mind. But just out of my peripheral, just see him sort of leaning forward, laughing as I'm doing the,
That's nice.
It's one of those things, well, because it's always uncomfortable, as I'm sure it was for you, to initially do it for the person. Because everyone around you thinks that would be the greatest thing in the world. You know, you've got to do it for him. Do it for him. He'll love it.
Yeah.
No, never. I can't. It always seems like, what's the point? The real person's right there. Why would...
And you'll meet people, I did anyway, who hated your impression of them.
Like who?
Richard Harris.
Hated it.
Yeah, I met him in Toronto. Now, he'd have been older now, because this would have been, I don't know, around the time of Gladiator, say.
Okay.
And somebody brought me up to him and said, Richard, this is Dave Thomas. He did you on SCTV. And one of the things I did with him was MacArthur Park.
Yes.
And at a cheesy sort of
I just had a flashback memory of it.
Show,
yeah.
Right? Like Dick Clark. And Eugene Levy was the host. And I did MacArthur Park live, and then during the bridge, did this really lame dance. And then that high note, I had a girl all through the whole bit sitting by the mic reading a book. And someone put the cake on the rain, oh no! And she gets up, just, oh no! And sings that one note, which I always believed somebody else sang for him.
Right.
And so anyway, I meet Harris, and he goes, I heard about it, but I didn't see it. But he said that in such a way that I knew
he made it clear.
Not only had he seen it, but he hated it, you know? Because my joke about him was that he had two voices, the low voice and the very high voice, and no voice in between, which made him an audio man's nightmare. You know, the guy sitting there like trying to run the sound.
Constantly on the dial.
And it became a running joke in SCTV where an additional joke that they added to that was when I used the low voice, people would throw bricks at me and hit me in the chest, as Richard Harris said, use the high voice and throw bricks. So it really got insulting, you know.
Sure.
But
yeah, it definitely got insulting, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange when you're faced with that, meeting the person when you know he might have taken a shot at him.
I met Cronkite, too.
What was his take?
And he had seen this bit that we did, which was a Mercury Players production of Murder in the Cathedral, which was astronauts in zero gravity doing the Beckett play.
Okay.
And so Rick, we used to do Brinkley and Cronkite together. Rick
Yeah.
would do Brinkley. And so Rick was in the lobby
Yeah,
interviewing.
Rick's Brinkley was fantastic.
Yeah, it was just dead on. And he was interviewing people that were bored with the play that were in the lobby, which included Tom Wolfe, Katharine Hepburn, and Catherine O'Hara did Katharine Hepburn. And I was doing the commentary from the book, which is just like, and it goes on and on, blah, 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 for about 10 pages. And then we get to the zero gravity, which is, because, you know, Cronkite was interested in space. So there, at the very end of this sketch, we had this thing that we just threw in, which was two really beautiful babes come up. And Rick, as Brinkley says, we're going to go out on Walter's boat. Walter, this is Amber and Tiffany. And I go, well, which one's mine? And so now I'm meeting Cronkite, and he goes, I saw that bit, the Cronkite Mercury Players thing, very funny, but got to the end, why the two girls? And I said, well, we didn't do that because we had any, or we're trying to suggest in any way that you're a philandering husband. And he just says, well, you have no idea how much grief that caused me.
Honey, there must be some truth to this, his wife said. Oh my God. That is too much. I want to allow the folks in. I mentioned to you earlier, you're not going to believe it when I tell you, do you believe we've been talking for 100 minutes? But in fact,
Stop it.
Yes, sir. Right there on the monitor behind you. 100 minutes, the director's letting me know.
Uh-oh.
No, there's no uh-oh.
So I should do my closing theme now, right?
Hey, thanks for the memories. Yeah, my Bob Hope is the Dave Thomas Bob Hope, and I've never done you
I
justice.
saw you when I was doing it, putting your jaw.
I know.
I was watching it,
Can't
and
help
I
it.
thought, he's doing this. He knows now that it's a jaw thing. There's a little cup in here where you put the. And as Hope got older, he got into the milk voice. You know, where now that you get older, the voice was more like that. You know.
There's a milk bubble.
I did this thing with him at the House Ear Institute. You know, when they tried to get Bob to wear a hearing aid for years, and he wouldn't do it.
Oh wow!
And this is a big event, and it was a dais with all these comedians: Phyllis Diller, Norm Crosby,
Sure.
Dick Van Dyke. Just a whole bunch of comedians get up and do. And me, what the hell am I doing there? I'm like 25 years younger than anybody else on the dais. And Hope is in the audience, and while people are doing their bits, he's going, "What's that? What did he say? I didn't hear it."
Oh no!
He's just like yelling from the audience. And then afterwards,
Oh, no.
they loaded everybody into this front area and had us go up on this riser. And Hope's like 95 or something now, 94.
Yeah.
He's really getting feeble.
Sure.
And we go up on this riser, and I got him by the arm, helping him up. And the riser's got a little bit of rock to it. Mm-hmm. So it scares old people, right? It scared me. And so when we were done with the media, everybody goes off the riser, and Hope is just like, "What's going on? What are we doing?" And he said, "Where's Dolores? She usually helps me with this stuff." And I said, "I got you, Bob. I got you. Don't worry. I got you." And I got him off the riser. And it was like a very strange moment, kind of sad for me, as the guy that saw him when he was like just such a lion in his prime.
Yeah.
And now he's just a guy rocking on a riser, and I'm helping him down, you know? Happy to be the guy who helps him down,
Oh,
but
bet.
sad that he's the guy that needs to be helped down.
Absolutely.
You know? Anyway.
Yeah, but a nice moment nonetheless.
Yeah.
Bittersweet, a moment like that, because you were there for him,
Yeah.
in a sense.
I realize how much time I've done on Hope in this thing, and
It's a fascination, though.
but it's not. I think it's because the Oscars thing woke it up. You know, it had been dormant for a while.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But that must have been a kick for you.
Actually, it was really uneventful and fast. You just go into a recording studio in like Hollywood. And,
No, what I mean to be there in the audience and see this thing.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember you telling me that in an email, anyways, that you ended
Yeah.
up going to the show itself, and so to sit there and see the whole thing unfold.
Yeah.
I was thrilled for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. We're going to offer up another last tweet 5 from Daytona Tracy at Daytona Tracy. Tweet 5.
T5, T5, T5 forever.
CFL or NFL?
NFL.
Grade 8 or 8th grade?
Grade 8.
Color or COLOUR?
COLOR.
Oh, nice. Z or Z?
Z.
Tim Hortons or Starbucks?
Starbucks.
All right. All correct.
I'm an American now. I'm here.
But
Yeah.
then why grade 8?
Yeah.
Because that's something that's programmed into you in your childhood. And as much as with my own kids who are all American, well, one's Canadian, but all the rest are American, raised American, you still say, so you're in grade 8. Dad, I'm in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You know? It's programmed.
It's in there.
Right. 4 kids. The youngest is
7.
7.
Not quite. It should be, no, she is 7. She is 7, yeah.
right. The
It's
20-year-old.
hard to keep track when you have that many kids. You know?
It must be. The 20-year-old's embarking on a new television career.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
He got cast in Lock and Key.
A huge
Fox
pilot. Yeah, gigantic,
Yeah.
sprawling.
And he's thrilled. He had to go to Pittsburgh on location for 5 weeks, live in a hotel, had per diems, never got
This
per
is where
diems.
the Fox family has come from, the Pittsburgh. Where,
Really?
Yeah. What did you tell you what hotel?
The Omni.
Oh yeah, that's right in downtown.
Yep.
They all perked up.
He was
That's a really nice hotel.
Oh, the Omni.
he was bummed out though because the closest Bank of America was 12 miles and he'd lost his card.
We don't even have Bank of Americas.
Yeah,
in
that's a
Pittsburgh.
problem. They're pretty sparse.
Yep.
Well, I listen. This has been a great joy for me, and I honestly and truly am extremely grateful for you coming down and spending time. And for those of watching or listening and wondering why we had to do 45 minutes on Bob Hope, it's because I've been forever fascinated by the expert. When it comes to the expert at any particular, also Bob's particular magic being recreated, I think, was something that tapped into any and all Bob Hope fans. You know, that was a thing I realized as a participant, that we were always just stealing the magic of the actual person, and that's why doing impersonations well was that one club in your bag that would always hit the ball the furthest, you know, because you were counting on an audience that already existed. You didn't have to necessarily earn the love that the original person actually earned, you know.
And I broke my promise to myself that I made when I saw Frank Gorshin do his act one time. And everyone in his act was dead.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I realized
I'm not going to be that guy.
I'm not going to be that guy, and here I am, Bob Hope, Walter Cronkite, Richard Harris.
Richard Harris.
Oh, they're all dead. My entire act is dead. Okay?
I do run into people, they say, who are the new people you're working on? And I look the other way. New people? I don't. Although Jason Statham has worked his way into the act, and I can say about 6 words as Jason Statham. Honest to goodness, thank you enough. Yes, question, please.
Oh, I just had a question. I had a story.
Oh, good.
A Dave Thomas story, because I was a fan of Grace Under Fire, and then this is back when I guess they still make TV Guide, right?
Sure.
But this is like the TV, like that was before you had like the guide on the TV. You know, you had to like actually get the mailer, and they had an article of TV's odd sex symbols, and Dave Thomas from Grace Under Fire was one of them, and I agreed at the time. I remember being a little girl saying like, I could see that.
Now, how do you feel about an
she's
ass
sweet.
backwards compliment? Because
was a
it's TV
compliment.
Guide's odd sex symbols.
I'm happy for any compliment I can get, you know?
First of all, they mentioned me in TV
Bring it
Guide.
up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Second of all, they used the word sexy.
Yeah.
Also fantastic. The
Sure.
fact that they attached the word odd.
I'm going to remind my wife of this when I go home.
You know, honey,
Come on, baby.
I was once TV Guide's odd sexy guy. Well, that's a fantastic memory. Sammy, anything
I
you
don't really
can
have
add?
much of a story, but I know my brother would kill me if I didn't reference all the long-leggedy beasties and ask Dave Thomas, now where's that guinea?
That, again, was from my mother, who's Scottish. And this is a sketch on SCTV with an old Scottish vet who people would bring their animals to him and he'd go, oh, yeah, it's not looking very good. I'm going to put him to sleep. And he put all the animals to sleep. And then he gets this young vet, played by Joe Flaherty, to become his assistant. And Joe says, Joe's going, he said, well, I'm not going to be doing what you do. What you do is like, and he said, yeah. He said, well, right. He said, but look what I get paid. I get paid a jar of jam, some pickles, and a chicken. I said, if I had to take a jar of jam, pickles, and chicken for all my work, I never would have seen all the great films I have. And I made the guy like a film buff, too. You know? And so Joe's like going, well, I'm not going to do that. And he says, he says, I'm getting drowsy. And I said, yeah, you weren't looking too hot. I took the liberty of putting something in your tea. You're going to sleep. Good night.
And then there's discussion of an antidote.
There was a thing with John in that where John was very sensitive about fat jokes, and he only let people close to him do fat jokes. But John had this horse that had a broken back. And I said, well, good Lord. I said, a man of your broad, expansive girth riding a wee pony like that, I should put you to sleep. But as it is, I'll do you a favor and put your horse down. Just, you know, that was almost improvised because I just loved the character, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. You get into that musical rhythm.
Yeah. The Scottish.
I had great fortune of meeting and working with John, and what a absolute
what'd you work with him on?
National treasure. The only fiction movie that Michael Moore ever did, called Canadian Bacon.
Oh, right, you're in that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It all comes full circle. We're back to Canadian.
He was a nice man, didn't you think?
Just heaven on earth. The most sort of warm and welcome and mother hen-ish at times too, looking after everyone on the set and making sure that everyone was taken care of and looked after. And oh boy, yeah,
a very gentle guy. And as I said
so
in Second City on stage, just so playful. You know, all he wanted. I think the Hollywood deal system confounded him because he had to play the game. He didn't like the game, and it hurt him and frustrated him, and he took stuff very personally, and then that was tough for him. You know, that was the tough part of it. But when he's in character, when he's working with actors, and he's playing, and he's getting to be the kid again, that was when he was having a ball. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask Animax.
Animax, my animation company, where honestly, I don't know how I got involved. It was like almost completely by accident. But a guy I know from The Simpsons asked me to be a partner with him and another friend, and I thought, well, gee, I've done TV movies, I've done sketch, I've done reality. Well, I'll try animation. And I tried it. It's really hard. It's frustrating sometimes, and getting the animated faces tweaked to give the expressions that you think are funny.
Right.
It's labor intensive, and I really admire the greats that do it well because it's just it's too hard. I think it's way too hard.
Right.
I get frustrated and lazy. Just go, okay, forget it. You know.
You probably enjoy your time more with the writers.
Absolutely. That's the place I love.
Yeah.
You know.
I got a sense from that. People may not know that you became a filmmaker as well. I did want to mention the introducing John Travolta to his wife of all these years, Kelly Preston, on the set of The Experts, right?
Yeah.
Is that really the first time they met?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I knew her from a really horrible movie we had done together called, it was like a witchcraft movie. I can't even remember the name of it.
Larry's House of Witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the movie.
I do. I love
it's amazing.
I love the film.
So Kelly had been in that, and she, believe it or not, was with George Clooney at that time.
Oh, yes.
And so I met her. I thought she was like this amazing girl. And then when we were casting The Experts, I just said, well, she'd be the best girl for it, and introduce her to John, and and then they connected. They didn't get together right during the show, or I think even right after it, but later they did.
Right.
But Kelly's one of these just girls. I remember going to a Kids in the Hall show with her, and some agents and Hollywood types, including Bernie Brillstein. And we're going in with Kelly, and Kelly comes, and she's one of these girls. She looks at all the T-shirts and stuff for sale. She goes, "Oh, I would just love one of those T-shirts." And literally, 5 guys put their money on the table. I'll get you a T-shirt.
Which one you want, honey?
Yeah, I mean, people were just ready to do anything for her, you know?
Yeah. And also incredibly gifted with comedy. I remember her, even that small role in, is it Jerry Maguire? She plays the awful
Yeah.
girlfriend in the beginning and punches him. And oh, man, she just had great timing. And anywho.
And drop dead gorgeous on top of it.
Didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the filmmaking as a director?
No.
I know that you guys co-directed the McKenzie Brothers movie, Strange Brew. But then to direct...
I like writing.
Right.
I don't like directing. It's just too hard.
Too much work.
And I don't like the system, the way it plays out, because you got to spend all this time in prep, and post, and production, and then it all rides on Friday on one day, and you stink or smell on that one day. And I'm sorry, I don't want to play that game. And for that particular movie, you know, they cast John in it. That wasn't a call on me, that was a studio call. But it was like right at a point in the kind of the bottom of John's career. John doesn't talk about the experts very much,
right?
For good reason. It was right before Look Who's Talking, which is where things kind of
came back. Yeah,
but I
the
thought
first comeback. He's had several.
He was a really nice man, and I really, at that time, Paramount genuinely abandoned him when they did that movie. They did no promotion, no support, nothing. They just threw it out there, and they didn't even give it a good opening. And John paid his own way to go to the opening because he's like that kind of stand-up guy. And it was just kind of sad, you know, to see the sort of studio. That's the stuff that I was telling you Candy hates, and I think Moranis doesn't like very much either. That sort of the deal stuff of Hollywood, the power brokers and that stuff. And if you get to that point in your career where you're actually dealing with those people,
right,
it's a different game.
What will it take to get Rick Moranis to do something?
I don't know. I guess
he says no to everything for a long time now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, last time I talked to him, he was doing a klezmer album.
What?
Go figure, right?
Really?
So he did this country album. I don't know if you got you got a Grammy nomination for that.
Holy, what?
Yeah, you did a country. You didn't hear about this?
He performed on a country album?
He wrote and performed and released himself.
As a country artist?
Yeah.
And got a Grammy nomination?
Got a Grammy nomination in comedy Grammy, which kind of galled him a little because he wanted a musical Grammy nomination, but he got comedy Grammy nomination.
So was the album country comedy?
Yeah, kind of. Definitely. And all the songs had kind of an edge and were kind of well-observed kind of shots at
But not a parody
songs.
in any way, shape, or form. A
I don't think
sincerely
so.
performed and produced
Yeah.
country sound. And
that's right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, got his own little band together.
Well, listen, as long as he stays involved creatively, those of us who stood on the sidelines as fans, you know.
And you know what, it's never say never, right? You know, or till the fat lady sings. You don't know. He might come out with something. I mean,
yeah.
That's the great thing about this business. You don't ever know what's going to happen, you know?
Well,
you think, oh, man, it's over for me. I'm done. I'm finished.
William Shatner starring in a television show. He's 80 years old.
What an amazing career that guy's had.
Truly. And I don't know, yeah. He, the episode where he interviewed me for his talk show, Raw Nerve.
Yeah.
I've never had so much positive response from almost anything I've ever done. He was spectacular at that.
Really?
Sitting there asking unnerving questions.
Well, Denny Crane, I mean.
Denny Crane was a
what
revelation.
What a great character.
I got the mad cow.
That's right. Now, are you the first guy to crack him?
Yeah, technically. Yeah. But he could get away with anything in that character. He could say anything, he could do anything because the character was famous for being batshit.
You, like as an impressionist, watching impressionists, you got that halting rhythm where he'll go a little ways and stop, like cold stop. That's, I think, Shakespearean, right?
Unfortunately for me, I'm happiest in those pauses. Because it forces the audience to sort of do this a little bit, like what's coming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got me to realize that that's what he was doing when he took these dramatic pauses for real in Star Trek or the Twilight Zones before that. Can we leave the diner? Can we go now? You know, that's sort of what's happening.
The agonized face.
But now it's you know that whole thing. Anyways, I could do this for hours. Okay. Celebrity Deathmatch you directed. I mean, I have all these things that you're going to have to come back. You played Boris Badenov, for God's sakes, one of my childhood heroes. Sally Kellerman, also fantastic. Directed by a friend of yours who you had cast...
In The Experts.
In The Experts.
Charlie Martin Smith.
Charlie Martin Smith.
That's right. Great guy. God. Really, and he went on to be a really talented director.
Yeah.
Still doing stuff, you know.
Toad from the George Lucas directed film American Graffiti.
Yes.
He played Toad in American Graffiti.
But he also was in The Untouchables with Kevin Costner.
Yes.
And was the accountant that got shot.
Yeah.
And he told me the story of Sean Connery, like, you know, holding him in his arms. And he said, Dave, I was crying. He said there was so much emotion coming from this guy who was like playing, as you know, a Chicago as a Scot.
Yeah.
Sure. He's like a Russian sub-commander. Sure. How do you like my Russian dialect? Dos vidania, you cheeky wee monkey. Sure. And then saying Highlander, I'm a Spaniard now. How do you like my Spanish dialect? Well, it's not just you cheeky wee monkey. He's like, that Scottish dialect's like a scar or a tattoo.
And he won the Academy Award for that. And I just remember thinking, when he says, that's the Chicago way. No, that's the Scottish way.
It really is,
It's not the Chicago way at all.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I threatened you at the before we started that you would at some point have to do your version of the Larry King game. Shall I go over the rules again?
Yeah, please refresh me.
I want a bad Larry King impression.
I won't hurt. I won't let you down
That's
there.
perfect. That's perfectly perfect. And then from there, it's just that little bumper that Larry would do. It's kind of a non sequitur, where he would share something about himself that nobody wants to know, and then go to the phone. If the name of the city is funny sounding, it's going to be helpful. That's your camera, sir. When you're comfortable, you stare down the barrel of that one, and just give us that little bumper that Larry might do at one point in his show.
A little lot of Kleenex in the underwear just after you urinate. Gentlemen like me, at my age, can avoid that unsightly stain later on. Rancho Cucamonga, go!
Thank you, sir. That was perfect. All right, I'm going to wrap things up there. If you wouldn't mind sitting uncomfortably for another minute while I say goodbye to the folks at home. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Real pleasure. All right. Thanks, folks, once again for joining us. We have some great shows coming up. Go to the local listings there on the calendar page of the chatshow.com. I know we have Fred Savage coming up in another month that I'm very excited about. Lorraine
Savage,
Newman
Peter
for our big
Weller.
anniversary show. The musical executive from 20th Century Fox is the first time we've had one of the big execs come around, but he's what started out as an amazing lounge act a la Billy Joel back in the 70s, Robert Kraft, who's been in charge of all music for television and movies at 20th Century Fox for many years now, is our guest next Sunday. And then Eugene Levy we mentioned in
Oscar
April,
Nunez.
and Rob Reiner is coming, so Peter Weller. A lot of great shows. Very excited.
Did Man vs. Food confirm?
Man vs. Food
Adam
is coming.
Richman.
Adam Richman is coming to town, and he wants me to do his show, and he's agreed to do this show.
I'm so excited.
So we're probably going to do a pre-tape and then just put it in. First.
Do we get to eat? Do I get to eat with them?
I don't know that we're going to have a choice.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to eat. My crew, our crew, aside from those inside the studio, have been working so very, very hard this last 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 9 seconds, trying to keep the ship afloat, as it were. And it is at this time, towards the end of the show, that I often wonder just what the hell they've been doing for the last 2 hours and 2 minutes. If only there was some sort of filmic evidence. Wait a minute.
Oh,
They don't-
abandoned ship. Oh,
What? Wait a minute. They're at a bar?
I don't.
Wait a second.
don't
They
care
have
for
this
this at all.
shiny glow of being drunk. Robin, my
right,
director!
3 sheets to the wind.
My director's passed out at the
Oh,
I guess we have to wrap things up on our own. Kenny,
I
help us
like
power down.
the neon bar side. That was
Yeah,
great.
that
It
was
looked
a nice segue to
I
the
like
neon.
that side.
That was pretty great.
good establishing shot.
Nice work. A little establishing shot. Nice work indeed. All right, folks, that'll wrap things up for this particular edition. We'll see you next time. Thanks for everyone. Julia Kay, come in here and help me wrap this thing up here. Come on, darling. Just stand next to me right here if you don't mind. All right, darling. You wore the shirt and everything.
I sure did.
Here, crouch down just a little bit so they can see your
okay.
beautiful face there. Nice, nice,
Oh,
nice.
there I am. Okay.
All right. You know how we wrap things up here every week, right? We say,
Well, we say-
thanks for watching, and as always,
I don't remember.
get out of my face. Perfect.
He's all of the rainbows, but none of the rain. He's dry, but he's an alcoholic. He's hosting this train wreck. miles ahead. He's careful.